Well, welcome back to the Ex-Homeschoolers Club. I am, of course, your host, Jacob Gooden, and today I'm joined by my friend Laura. I'm so excited to have Laura. We have known each other for a good long time. I know as far back as I can remember in my homeschool journey, she's pretty much been around and a part of it. Um, from what we were talking about before we hit record, I think we met during Group Solutions. Does that sound about right?
Yeah,
Okay.
sounds about right.
So, and for those of you who don't know, Group Solutions was basically an opportunity for our homeschool community to come together, and parents taught classes and kind of put kids in more of like a classroom setting. So we actually got to learn how to interact and be semi-normal around each other. So anyway, Laura, I'm stoked to have you. Thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Well, let's kick things off with your homeschool journey. Like, what were you always homeschooled? I know you're one of four siblings, and I know at some point all four of you have been homeschooled, but like, were you homeschooled all the way through? Was it a later in life? Did you go all the way through high school? What was the deal there?
Yeah, I was homeschooled my whole life. I think my twin sister and I are the only ones out of the four siblings that were homeschooled throughout. My older sister was in public school, and then my younger sister went to independent studies in high school. So my twin sister and I were the only ones that were fully homeschooled throughout. And I mean, I had a really good, decent experience, but there were some ups and downs for sure.
Absolutely. I think we all have those like cringy moments of that we're looking back on and we're like, that wasn't great. That could have been
Yeah,
a lot better.
totally.
Well, that's really cool. So overall, a semi-positive experience, which is cool. But
Yes.
are there any moments that stick out in your head as like, as just like a favorite home? I mean, obviously you did it your whole life. Like, I talked about in my solo episode of just like I had already gone to public school for a couple years, and so it was really hard to transition into homeschool and all of a sudden be at home with my mom all the time. But like that was just obviously normal for you because that was all you ever do. Um, but are there any particular moments that stick out in like early homeschool years of just like, I don't know, it could be weirdness, it could be just like an awesome moment. Is there anything like that that sticks out for you?
For like a cool moment of homeschooling was like so in high school we did background work. So we worked, I think, 3 or 4 years, maybe our whole high school career in LA. So we did schooling and like the sets, the background sets, and that was really cool. And like growing up, there was the flexibility of like if we wanted to have a random day off, we could go have a day off and go to the park or go to the beach. Or if family came into town, it was kind of a free day. We would make up for it later, but we could easily take that day off. So that was something I really enjoyed was the flexibility of it and to just be with my sisters all the time. We fought like crazy, but we like we're together all the time and those were like my best friends. So, and a negative probably aspect from it was just, being so isolated and missing out on like the sports, the proms, homecoming, and, the friends aspect, even though I had friends in homeschooling, there was that part of me that felt like, I didn't have public school friends. Like that's what I had to have was public school friends. I don't even know why. Not that they were, any better, like friends are friends, but there was just that part of me that was like I wanted to fill that void. And just to, have a locker, decorate my locker and teachers. So that was always something I wanted. Now looking back, I'm like, I was so silly because I was fine and I don't want that now. So
That's hilarious. You brought up something I totally spaced on the fact that you guys were like in TV shows and stuff. And
yeah.
I shouldn't have spaced on that because I literally was just watching New Girl and you guys were in an episode of New Girl. Um
Yeah.
and I recently just watched that episode. So I don't know how I spaced on that. But what like how many TV shows were you guys in? Do you remember?
Oh gosh. So it was Andrea, Jose, and I that did background work. So between all three of us, God, there were so many TV shows and commercials, movies. I think, oh gosh, I don't even know how many shows I was on. I was on a lot. I think the ones that you could probably seen me is probably like 3 or 4 shows. I was on the show Parenthood for 6 months or 5 or 6 months. So that was really fun. New Girl, I was on, I think it was 2 days. Uh, and that was the one show, New Girl, that I was like, I don't want people to remember me. And that's the only show people see me on because I was so sick that day. Like I had a fever, like the flu, I had a cough, like I looked so miserable in that episode. I'm the one wearing the green shirt. And I remember thinking, like, I never want people to remember me from this episode. And now that's the only episode people will message me about. So it's so funny. But yeah, so I was on New Girl, and then Parenthood was my favorite show because that was just very family based. And like everyone was just so sweet and down to earth. And I pretty much did like senior year on that Universal Studios lot. So
Was that kind of like the goal of like how did you guys fall into that? Like was it something where you guys had just wanted to act and so you were like, okay, let's look for opportunities, and then like was the goal to like make it a career, or like what was kind of the thing of it? Because that's like such a cool thing to like be able to do, especially like to say like, oh yeah, and I as a homeschool kid, yeah, I also got to go like work on TV shows and commercials and stuff. That's super fun.
well, since Andrea and I were little, we wanted to be like an actress. I was like, I want to be like Hilary Duff,
Of
and
course.
be the next Lizzie McGuire. And so that was like our dream was to be famous. And so, and my older sister had experience doing that when she was younger. And so my mom kept telling us, like, I don't think you want to do that and all this stuff. And so we were like, begging her to do this. And so finally she let us, and she was going to let us make that decision ourselves. Like once we were in high school, and she like kind of took us in there. Our uncle was an actor. So he knew what industry, what managements to get into that were safe. And so that's what we did was we got into the management, and they just started sending us calls, and they call you and say like, I need a 16-year-old Hispanic girl with black hair to be on, this show and stuff. And then you accept the call, and then they send you. And so that's kind of how we got started. Now, once we started it, I was like, I hate it. I do not like this. It was so fun, and I'm thankful for the experience and the shows I was on, but it was so tough because there is this very high standard that you need to be perfect, you need to be skinny, you need to be tall, you need to be outgoing, like all these standards that you need to meet. And if you don't meet those standards, they will tell you. The directors will tell you no matter how old you are. And so that was really hard to hear that. And even if you met all those standards, you can't like outshine the main actress. And that happened to me once on a TV show was I looked basically too good. And so they needed to move me to the back because I looked too good. And so that was like a little shocking because it was like, okay, I'm doing everything you would like me to do. And now I look too perfect. So that was a little tough. And, there's just the competition with all the other kids that want their shot, that want to be an actor, a comedian, models, whatever. So there's a lot of competition. And then you're dealing with stage moms. And stage moms are a whole nother level. And so that was really hard was the competition. And at that point, I wasn't doing background to become an actress or a Hollywood star. It just became like I just needed to make money because I wanted to provide for my family. And so by that point, I was like, I don't care. Like if the directors, assistant directors would come in looking for kids, they just moms throw themselves at them. They throw their kids at them, and I was just like, I'm over it. If I get picked, I get picked. And a lot of the times I would get picked because I wasn't throwing myself at these directors. But yeah, so it was really tough. And then once I turned 18, you're no longer covered by like law that like, all those under 18 law requirements. So you're like free game. So by that point, I was like, I'm over it. I don't really want to do this anymore. My parents were going through a divorce. And so I was like, I just want to be home. I don't really keep going out to LA, gone for 10 hours a day, not knowing what's happening at home. So that's when I was like, okay, I'm done with this. But I am thankful for the opportunity that I had, especially being so close to LA. So
That's super cool. I don't know that we've ever chatted about that before, but I've always kind of wondered because I was like, I mean, I think every kid has that dream of like, oh, I want to be famous someday, but like not
yeah,
everyone actually like takes steps to like pursue that. And so it was
yeah,
definitely cool to like, know people that were like, oh, well, they've been on TV shows and they've been in commercials and things like that, even though maybe it wasn't as glamorous behind the scenes.
yeah.
But that is really cool. And also like so many skills that you learn off of that, right? The ability to like go out and if
You?
you do have lines or just like be confident enough on camera. I mean, I'm super
Yeah.
camera shy. It's so yeah, so it's weird that I'm doing a podcast now because
Yeah.
I hate being on camera. I've been so much behind the scenes for so long and now I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, now I gotta put it all on me.
You're doing great though.
Well, thank you. Um, also, being a homeschool kid, a lot of us fear like public speaking. I mean, I think a lot of people fear like public speaking or like just that having to present yourself to the world, right? And so that's
Yeah.
what a great way to kind of like get out of that, like just push through that is like be on TV, right? And
Yeah.
especially like you got to go through, like you said, like auditions and fighting against like other kids who are up for the same role and like. But
Mhm.
I think what you said there about just like not really caring, just being like, I'm gonna let my performance speak for itself, and
Yeah.
people respected that and picked you for it. The best advice I
Yeah.
ever got when I got to college was I had a professor who sat me down and just said, "You got to learn to be cool. Like you just got to fit in
Mhm.
with the crowd." Kind of a thing.
Yes.
And obviously, you present your unique self, but like you're not overdoing it, right? You're just there
Yeah.
and
Like,
you're cool and you can hang with anybody and you can be cool and you can just be in the room. And so,
yeah.
yeah, you and your sister have always been super cool in my book. Too cool for school. So,
Oh my gosh. Oh, thank you.
so aside from that, is obviously a huge extracurricular, which a big myth that is that a lot of homeschoolers don't have extracurriculars. That is a huge extracurricular. But you also talked about
Yeah.
the fact that you felt like you were missing out so much in school because you didn't have a
Mhm.
locker, you weren't in sports, kind of the standard junior high, high school stuff that a lot of guys and girls go through. And so,
Yeah.
was there any other like extracurricular stuff you guys were doing aside from acting in school, or was it mostly just that?
So that took mainly our focus in high school, but we still were doing like the homeschool dances, dance lessons, so like swing. I remember you talking about like the West Coast swing. I remember that one, Lindy Hop, the waltz, the English country dancing. So we did all those. But I have to say this, like, sorry to my mother because we did not go easily. We went kicking and screaming. At least I know I did, because I did not want to learn those dances, because I felt like I was too cool for school. Now I'm super thankful I know those dances. But yeah, so we did all those lessons, and then I would do like AYSO soccer every year. It was like every fall. So that's something that we would do. And then we also were at the community college, Ventura College, taking sports classes. So you do like soccer, swimming, tennis, or whatever. So even like a gym class. So that's kind of like what we would do. And I think that's pretty much it. Like we would do like knitting classes.
There was a lot of that home ec stuff. I feel like because yeah, my sister took
Yeah,
something like that, and
home economics. We had to learn how to be like a good housewife, and cook and sew and all these things. So there was all that stuff. And I did not go to these things easily. It was usually a fight with my mom. So some of those classes were fun and I'm thankful I did those. But then there's some that I'm like, I could have lived without. So
it's so funny because I love cooking, and I haven't always loved cooking, but I love cooking now, and and I work from home, and so like
okay.
yeah, and so like having a meal on the table when my wife gets home from work is like I love it. So like it's funny because I tell people I'm like our roles are kind of reversed. Like I was used to, my dad would come home from work and my mom would have dinner on the table, and now I'm that. So our joke is always that
Yeah.
like I'm just such a good housewife, and
Yeah.
I'm one of the real housewives of Nashville. But it's just I
Yes, we
really
support that.
do enjoy like that stuff. I've always enjoyed things like sewing and like more of the home ec stuff. And
Mhm.
so it's just funny to look at it and like you said, go kicking and screaming into it. But you also brought up one of my favorite pastimes, which was swing dance, of course. And yeah,
Mhm.
that was always a blast. Like you said, our homeschool group had like dances every year, and they would try to kind of like give us somewhat of a normal high school, junior high experience by having dances, but it was not the typical like DJ bump and grind kind of a thing. It was like we would
No.
do swing dance, ballroom, waltz, tango. Tango was risque though,
Oh, yeah.
but
Naughty.
cha cha, yeah, tango was naughty.
Yeah.
But those skills have come in so clutch so many times for me on just the most random events that I've been at where it's just like, oh, everyone's doing the Charleston all of a sudden. It's like, oh, I know how to do
Yeah.
that.
Well,
Um, but that's so funny. Earlier I think you brought up prom, and I was remembering as we were talking that we actually went to the same prom, not together,
yeah.
but it was on a
Yeah,
paddle
not
boat. Yeah,
together.
not together. I am
Yeah.
having Julia on though, and we are gonna
Oh,
hopefully talk about.
that's gonna be so fun. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I'm very excited. So I went to two proms. I went to prom with Carrie
Mhm.
Franz, and then the following year, that was my junior prom. And then my senior prom, I
Okay.
went with our friend Julia. And
Yeah.
you were there as well. It was on a paddle boat, from what I remember.
Yes.
And it was in combination with, I think, was it? It was like a Christian high school, I think. And so it was a mix
Yeah.
of homeschool kids and private school kids. A lot of who we
Yeah.
who we knew um,
Yeah.
from they had been homeschool kids, I think a lot of them, before high
Yeah.
school.
And they went to that private school.
Yeah. So good times. But I remember those experiences being a little bit different because since it wasn't a homeschool event, the DJ was just playing like dance music. And I felt like the homeschool kids like didn't know what to do with it, right?
Yeah.
And my inner Mexican came out because, well, I don't look it. I am a quarter Hispanic, and so, but all I had was my great grandma Alice in my head going, "You just got to go out there and shake it," because that was her birthday parties was always just like this big festival, and they would have a DJ, and we just go party on a dance
Yeah.
floor kind of a thing, and so. And I would always be as a kid. I was like, but I don't know how to. And she's like, it doesn't matter. You just make it up as you go along. And so
I feel like you did the worm at
I
that
don't think
prom.
so. I was never a
Like,
worm guy.
you were like,
Maybe
I feel like you were moving a lot. Now that you're talking about it, I remember you dancing a lot, like on the boat, right? Is that what
on the
you're
boat.
talking
Yeah.
about? Yeah. That was, yeah, I remember it was you, and then there had to been someone else. I think it was someone else that went to the Christian school that was dancing like so crazy. And it was like, wow, like we were dancing to like dynamite. And okay, I have to share. I do remember the proms, but those were not the proms I wanted. I do remember the first prom we went to. It was at Alivas Adobe, I believe. Because we were both part of Achieve, just so everyone's aware.
Yeah.
And I remember someone requested The Riff Shot by Macklemore to be played. And I can't remember, I'm pretty sure you were there. I don't remember if you remember this moment, but that song came on and a mom got very, very upset and demanded it be shut off. And then we had to start praying. Do you remember
I
that?
do remember that. It's so funny how music is such a like it can be such a turnoff. And this goes into like the protective nature of like homeschool parents and like religious parents in
Yeah.
general of like
Yeah.
my parents let me get away with a lot. Obviously they protected me from some music. Thrift Shop was one that it snuck in, but the clean version snuck in,
Yeah.
kind of a thing. But I had an instance where after I had graduated, I left, I went to college. I got a phone call while I was at college that I was coming home for Christmas, and they said, "Hey, we need a DJ for this homeschool Christian dance." And I was like, or homeschool Christmas dance, excuse me. And I was like, "Oh yeah, sure. I still have all the playlists. I have all that stuff. So yeah, I got
Yeah.
it. Swing dance, you got it. I got you covered." I'm there. I'm DJing. I put on a Queen song, and a mom instantly runs over to me, and I'm like, "Oh no." And she is all these songs, by the way, have been approved by Achieve. They've gone through the
Uh-huh.
circuit. She comes running over to me and she goes, do you know that that song is sang by a gay man? And I was like, yes, it's Queen. Like everyone knows who Queen is.
Classic, iconic.
And she's like, you need to turn that off right now. And I said, well, it's approved music by Achieve. So like, if you don't like it, you can take it up with them. But like, I'm not about to just cut this song off midway. Kind of a deal. And her
Yeah.
and I had this like little back and forth, and it was just so funny. And I don't know why. I get it for some songs. Obviously, there's very raunchy songs out there that, yeah, maybe we shouldn't have been listening to.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it
Yeah.
was just like, we're enjoying, we're dancing to Queen. It's not that big of a deal, you know.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that was a fun time because I remember that song was very popular and it was like, come on, like I was about to drop it. Like I was really excited. Finally, a good song was playing, and then we had to pray. So
Yep.
that was a highlight of prom for me. And then of course the boat was fun and chaotic as well, being dress coded up and down. So
Let's talk about that a little bit because it's something that, well, I personally got dress coded maybe once or twice, but for guys it was a lot easier. So in our homeschool community, for dances, I mean, it was basically for everything. There was dress code. For guys, it's pretty simple. Just wear slacks and a dress shirt. I mean, unless you
lucky.
show up wearing a dress shirt that has like Playboy bunnies on it, I really don't think they're gonna turn you away, kind of a thing. You know, like
Yeah.
it was one of those
Yeah.
things where it's like, yeah, unless what you are wearing has something risque on it, or if you show up in ripped jeans, like they're really not. And even if you showed up in jeans, half the time you could smooth talk your way in.
Yeah.
The girls had it so
Yeah.
much harder because, I mean, one, you guys had to cover cleavage, straps had to be a
Mhm.
certain thickness, like lengthwise it had to be, you know. So what, like, tell me about that and like what that, I don't know, like that just seems crazy to me.
Oh my gosh, I was telling my mom this, like that was probably the most tough situations to be in as a junior high or even elementary. I don't know how old we had to be to go to these dances, but however young it was, all the way through high school was just very hard to hear things, that they say, have lasagna straps, not spaghetti straps. Don't show your cleavage. Their skirt needs to be touching the top of your knee, and don't make the boy stumble. Like, just to hear things like that where it's like you're always the problem and you have to make sure that you hold a higher standard as a woman, especially for the boys that are going through so much. It was really hard because um there were ways you could smooth talk to get in, but you could smooth talk when mom and three moms are upset. So that was really hard because when you did get in, you're getting looked down upon of like, oh, she's showing. And I hated when the rulers would come out, when they would pull the rulers out to measure your skirt, make sure, see how close it is. Is it half an inch, quarter of an inch touching your knee? I hated that because at that point, everyone could see you. You're at the front door. Right next to the front door is the whole ballroom, dance room. And your friends are watching. Oh, is she going to come in? You pay your money, you go in. And then to be turned away and say, no, you have to go home and change. And for families like us, like I grew up in Oxnard, having to go to these dances in Ventura or even Ojai, it was hard. And like, I love the dances because I got to be with my friends. So like my mom would take us home and we would change and she would take us back. So it was things like that that was really just annoying. And it's not like these these moms didn't know us. These were our friends' moms. These were moms in Achieve that knew us. And it was just like, let us in. Sometimes, I mean, at some point, we just started bringing extra clothes with us because we didn't want to have to make the trip back. So we just go change and you work so hard as a junior higher in a high school. You want to look cute. You're going through puberty. You're starting to notice like, oh, I can wear makeup. I can do my hair, and then to be told like, oh, you're showing too much. Go home. At some point, it's like you might as well just wear a t-shirt and skirt down to your ankles because you're going to get talked about. Sometimes emails would be sent. And that was really hard because I think we started to gain a reputation as we just don't follow the rules because there's, two of us with my twin and I, then my older sister who was in high school still at some point. I think we did some dances together. So it was really hard and annoying. And I think what likes me the most is don't make the boys stumble because it was like that is not our job
Yeah.
to keep the boys from stumbling.
It's really interesting you bring that up because I just did an interview for a show, and I talked about purity culture and I talked about growing up in purity culture. And yeah, that was a big emphasis of like it's the girl's job to make sure you don't stumble. And I always first of all, that's bullshit. Just plain and simple, it's
Yeah.
bullshit. Um,
Yes.
as guys, it's our responsibility to, keep your thoughts to yourself and to, and like to control yourself, honestly.
Yeah.
And, if a girl wearing spaghetti straps over lasagna thick straps is going to be that thing that does it for you, check yourself. Because that's not okay. Um, and so I feel so bad for all of you girls because I mean, I think there was an unreasonable expectation that wasn't even necessarily coming from your peers. It was coming from parents, right? Wanting to protect their kids. But
Mhm.
so I think that's where it's hard because it doesn't 100% come from a bad place, but it comes
Yeah.
from a place of parents not wanting to have actual conversations with their kids about like when you're going through puberty. I mean, just like the emotions and the hormones
Yeah.
are raging, right? And like
Yeah.
if you have a parent who's actually just willing to sit down with you and talk about what's going on in your body and like how do you respond to that, and like especially as a guy, like also like what does it mean to like have female friends, and like what does it mean to be in a romantic relationship and all these things. It's like, well, all of a sudden it's really not that hard to control yourself
Mm.
um and not look lustfully at a girl, because it's
Yeah.
not her job to um it's not her job to keep you pure. It's your own job. And so
Mhm.
I'm sorry that that happened to you. That is terrible.
I laugh about it now.
Yeah, it's it's nice to kind of be out of it to some degree,
Yeah.
right? And it's like, okay, now you don't have somebody telling you can't wear a short skirt or spaghetti straps or strapless. Even
Yeah.
for my sister, I know that was a big deal too. My sister super tall, she's taller than I am,
Mhm.
and her legs just go for miles, and so just finding anything that fit her was just also ridiculously hard.
Yeah.
And I mean, my parents were on the board of Achieve. So if we showed up and we got dress coded, that was not a good look, right?
Yeah.
But so they checked us like usually before we left the house, which I mean, I'm sure your mom did too. I'm sure your mom went,
Oh,
"You guys look amazing. Like we're gonna have
oh,
such a great time." And yeah, to show up and then be told like, "No, your dress doesn't meet." It's like, what are you talking about? That is just no. Are you kidding me?
yeah. I mean, we would pull our skirts down to as low as we could so it could touch our knee. And then once, if we did pass, then we'd pull our skirt back up. Like, oh, it's not touching our knee, or like pull our shirts up as high as we could. And then once we were in, pull them down a little
Yeah,
bit. But my mom was like our biggest support of like, you girls are beautiful. Don't let them tell you anything. Like she was very supportive. And like she would remind us like, these are not your moms. This is not your mom. I'm your mom. And if I say it's okay, you can wear that. And so that really helped because, it does leave a mark. So to hear that, when we would get dress coded, even if we didn't, like she would say, like, remember, I'm your mom and you only need to listen to me and my rules, like obviously respect the other moms. And like you look beautiful. You don't have to dance with a guy you don't want to. So like to have those pep talks before was really helpful because there was times where we would leave the dance like sometimes crying because moms would make comments and stuff. So our mom was very supportive, and sometimes she would like drop us off because it was just easier not to be there. The drama.
yeah,
And by the time we were in high school, we had a backbone. We could stand up for ourselves. Where I think that started causing friction between some homeschool moms. But by that point, we were just like, you can't tell us what to do,
yeah.
which was not good. I'm not saying that was the right thing, but like we just had to start standing up for ourselves because it was either stand up for ourselves or let it affect us in the long run.
Yeah.
So
I we were talking before we started recording about those dances, um and we were talking about you felt safe dancing with me because I wasn't a creep.
mhm.
And firstly, I appreciate you saying that,
Yes.
and that's not to toot my own horn, but it's funny because I think the only comments that ever got made to me at those dances was I had one dad come to me after I had danced with his daughter, and he said, "I didn't like the way that you touched her." And I was like, "Okay." And I don't know what you want me to do about it. I didn't feel like I did anything wrong, and it was not the intention, right?
Yeah.
And the result of that was I never danced with her ever again. And I always felt really bad because years later she found out that like that was the reason, and she was so mad at her
Yeah.
dad for it. Um because he couldn't tell me what I did wrong. He just was like, "Oh, I didn't like whatever." And I was like, "But what about it did you like?" And it's like it's just like those
Yeah.
little comments like that can dig at you and yeah, really get you upset and
True.
bothered, which is like not a
Yeah.
good thing.
Yeah. Definitely not.
I don't know if you experienced this at all, but another very common thing in the homeschool group was if you were dating, a lot of homeschool families, a lot of Christian families in general do this, but they do the whole like courtship before you're dating. Parents are very involved. They go on the dates with you, that kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
But like, did you have to experience anything like that?
No, so it was kind of confusing. Like my mom's rule is we couldn't date until we were 16, but my dad's rule is 18. So I just didn't date. I was like, I don't want to date. It's too much drama. And I was more into the partying and like other things, besides dating. So that really wasn't my focus until after high school. I did have crushes, and I'm sure my mom knew who my crushes were because I probably was horrible at hiding them. Um, but I never experienced it, but I would see things that would happen that was like, that's a little interesting, or like, the courtships was I think I saw so many courtships that it just freaked me out that I didn't want to I didn't want to be in one. I would hear what the rules were, what you had to do, and it was just like, no, not that my mom would make me do that. Like my mom was super chill about that stuff, but it was the pressure coming from everyone. And I really feel bad saying this. I really did not want to date a homeschooler. So my interest was never in the homeschool like area. I had crushes and stuff, but they were just more like for fun. I was a high schooler, thirsty kind of thing. But it was never like, oh, I want to marry him or I love him. It was just like, yeah, he's cute. Let's mess with him. But yeah, no, I'm really thankful I never had those experiences. And I'm sorry you did, but I think that would have scarred me if I did.
No, I think we both lucked out now being married to non-homeschoolers because I don't know about your husband, but my wife definitely points out some of my weirdness and has helped me overcome certain things where she's like, "I don't get why you get hung up on this." And it's like it's the upbringing thing
Yeah.
that she didn't have to deal with that. And so she's just like she's cool. She's normal, so to
Yeah.
speak. I mean, we're
Yeah.
all normal in our own ways, but
Oh, yeah, totally. That's exactly how my husband loves to point out, like, "Oh, your homeschooler is showing," or, "Is that something you guys did in homeschooling, like the swing dancing and, like, certain shows?" Like, I wasn't allowed to watch SpongeBob or, like, Wizards of Waverly Place, and he's like,
same.
"Oh, it's the homeschooler in you," and it's like, "Yeah, but I'm also glad I didn't watch SpongeBob now." But, like, there's things like that that he likes to make jokes about, and now I think it's funny because 'cause I'm like, "Oh my god, that's actually pretty hilarious that what I thought was so normal is not normal." So,
Yeah, it's all within the context of what you live in, right? It's like yeah, you don't realize until after the fact that you're like, that was not normal, in any sense of the word. But let's pivot a little bit and talk about post homeschool years and like kind of going into career path. You're now a mom. Like what what did that look like for you?
it was very challenging, because I think the main thing was my parents got divorced when we were 17. So, senior year, we were going, like, our family was like separating, and it was just really a really dark time. So by the time that all finished and I finished high school, I just was in a very dark place. And so I really just focused on partying, drinking, and all the things you're not supposed to do. So I was still in community college. I had been in community college all throughout high school, which I'm very thankful my mom had us do. So I was continuing my community college education during that time, but I was so into partying and all that, I was failing my classes. So I ended up taking some time off from college and just working, like just like low end jobs. And because I just wasn't ready, I wasn't ready to go back to college. I was dealing with a lot of stuff. And finally, I think maybe 2 years after out of high school, 2 or 3 years, my mom sat me down and was like, you really need to go do something to make you happy. Cause I was finally getting out of my party phase and just bad lifestyle. And so she recommended that I do YWAM, which is Youth with a Mission. It's like a 6 month mission trip. And so I just needed a change. There was so much change that had happened in the last 2, 3 years that I just needed basically to get away. And so I did. I went to Germany and Malaysia for a total of 6 months. And that just changed my life. I think I just needed to heal. I needed to repair my walk with God and deal with everything that um, felt normal in my childhood. I needed to just deal with that because it was not normal. And being homeschooled, you're so isolated. Even though you're doing all these extracurriculars, you're still very isolated. So I felt trapped for a lot of that. So to deal with that and heal was very helpful. And then once I came home, I was ready to go back to school. So I finished community college. Then the pandemic hit, and that just was really hard. But I made it through. My husband, who was my boyfriend at the time, really helped me pass community college. And if it weren't for him, I would not have a degree. Or my mom. My mom really pushed us. I know there's that stigma that like the moms stop after high school. My mom was with me till I got my bachelor's degree this past year. Like she never gave up. She always helped me with FAFSA. She always helped me with classes. Like, even being 21, she was doing things with me to help me get my college education. So then I finally got accepted to a university after community college and then got my degree in communications. And it was hard because when I look at it, I'm like, I basically was in college for like, well, including high school over like 10 years. But aside from that, it was probably like 4 years. And so to see my friends that are my age who got their degrees like 3, 4 years ago, and I just got mine this year, was a little challenging. But now I feel like so much in a better place because I'm like, everyone's journey is different. And at least I got my degree. That was my only goal in life. Like, sounds silly, but my only goal in life was to just get my bachelor's degree because we had gone through so much that I just needed to know I could do it. Because, like, hearing your whole life from my dad, like, oh, you're not smart enough and, college degrees are worthless and things like that, to know that I was able to do it was so empowering for me. And so to have that college degree, be married, and have a kid, like, it's been amazing. But I am really thankful because my mom, she basically held my hand the whole time. And I'm so thankful for that because I know a lot of kids didn't have that. But she really believed in all of us and pushed us. And, we were monsters to her, all of us, with getting our degree, but she never gave up on us. And now all her kids have a bachelor's degree or a master's degree. So I'm really thankful. And that's just where it's been. So don't ask me what I'm doing with my degree now because I can't answer that. But I have it.
That's
So
okay. Hey, you have a 6 month old, so I mean you are allowed to play mom for the time being,
yes,
for as long
thank
as you
you.
want. And and also, I mean, degrees, it doesn't mean you ever have to use it. You will use it regardless, but it's just, yeah. And what's so interesting is that I think in the homeschool community, there's kind of this idea, especially in a Christian homeschool community, that everybody's family is like super happy behind the scenes and like things are going well and like, you know, and that's just not the case. The more and more I talk to people, the more I realize like, oh my gosh, like their parents hated each other, or as siblings, like they really don't get along, or like,
Mhm.
there are these insane things that we never knew were going on behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And so like you said, everyone's journey is like so vastly different. And, obviously like congratulations to like making it
Thank
through.
you.
And yeah, I never want to judge anybody for like, oh, it took you 10 years to get a degree. That's like, it's like, no, you did,
Yeah.
regardless how fast, how quick how slow, it doesn't matter. Like you did it. That's incredible.
Yeah.
And during all that, you healed and you traveled and you probably had incredible experiences during that whole period
Oh,
as
yeah.
well. So yes, claps to you.
Thank
Of
you.
course, that's wonderful, and congratulations that you said you graduated this year, like just a few months ago. Wow,
Yeah, I graduated in May,
wow,
so last of well, technically I finished in December, but I walked in
you
May.
walked.
So,
Yeah,
yeah.
very cool. Well, congratulations. That's amazing.
Thank you.
That yeah, I remember walking through, and that feeling of like accomplishing something like that is huge. And like I had parents too who kind of like they had prepped me to want to go to college or at least to pursue something outside of like being a homeschool kid, and just the way that my drive was, I was like, if I don't go now, I never am gonna do this. And so I was like,
Yes.
I can't stop. So I went right from high school into college and then did it in 3 years. Mostly because I hated it there because I was so used to like I liked the homeschool experience of like hand me a textbook
Yeah.
and like hand me a syllabus and I can just make it happen. So
Yeah.
like going to classes was like not I didn't love that, but like doing it in 3 years and then walking out of there being like, oh my gosh, I did something. Like when I figured out that I could do it in 3 years, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna do this. I can make this happen. And yeah, and I don't feel a desire to go back and do any other type of higher
Yeah,
education.
right.
I don't want a master's, I don't want a
Yeah.
doctorate. But I still am learning every day, which like I think is important. That's super cool. For those people who are thinking about homeschooling their kids, and I mean you're a mom now, so you actually can like even speak to this probably better than a lot of people can. But like, who are thinking about homeschooling their kids or doing like non-traditional school for their kids, like, would you say like yes, like 100% do it? You know, are you on the fence about it? Like, what goes through your head when it comes to that kind of stuff?
I definitely want to homeschool my kids for sure, my daughter right now, but I would love to homeschool. I think I would do it probably the same way as my mom, not keeping us as sheltered and, under a rock. She really educated us on like old classic movies and music and stuff. So I appreciate that she didn't block us from that kind of stuff, which didn't make us resistant to her in that area. So that's kind of the area of how I would want to homeschool, our kids someday, and just the freedom to do what I want and teach what I want, but also, teach what's out there in the world with a little bit more control. I've just heard some stories, how the public school system is now that it just makes me a little nervous. But it definitely will take a lot. It makes me nervous because I'm not a patient person, and so I know that, that would be challenging, but, I'm definitely very open to it. I recommend it to people because I do think it's amazing. I know a lot of homeschool families now that are still in that process, and they love it, and I think it's so different now today than it was for us in high school, since the pandemic because everyone had to do school at home. So there's a lot more resources. There's a lot more educational books that people can use. So like I feel like there's way more resources for families to use rather than one or two specific curriculums. And yeah, I would love that. My husband is a little on the fence. He doesn't want to have his thing is I don't want to have weird homeschool kids, and I totally get that. That's completely valid. But I just remind him, like I turned out okay. Like people are so surprised when I tell them I was homeschooled because I have very good social skills. So I always encourage him, like, I would do it to the best of my knowledge of what I was trained and brought up in my family. But I know he is nervous for that. So hopefully that's our goal is to homeschool or just have a little bit more control of the education that we give our kids.
Yeah, that freedom. Yeah, I think COVID changed it for a lot of people, right? That freedom to be able to like to go do stuff. I did school at Disneyland one day, like you,
I heard on your podcast.
yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah, and it was one of those things where I think when it actually was happening, I was not thrilled for it, but after it had happened, it was fine because it was one of those things where I'm pretty sure my parents were like, "Okay, we want to go to Disneyland on this day. You got to have all your schoolwork done." I didn't do it, so I had to take it with me, and that meant, okay, I got to sit in Disneyland and work on math problems. Well, this sucks. But it actually was a lot of fun because Disneyland is, as most people know, is a magical place. great music,
Yeah,
great smells, characters walking
magical
around.
homework.
Exactly. It made it actually so much better than sitting at the kitchen table,
Yeah,
trying to knock it out. So,
yeah, that's so cool.
but yeah, I have so many friends now who they had kids during the pandemic or like right before the pandemic, and their kids are just starting to hit like school ages, and they're like, yeah, we're thinking about pulling our kids out and doing homeschool and like going and traveling the world and seeing stuff. And I'm like, is such
Mhm.
a cool opportunity of like, yeah, you can literally go anywhere. You can do it anywhere. And there's
Yeah.
so many more resources than there were back in the day. And I think a big part, like you said, you have great social skills. Your mom obviously did a killer job, and you were a comm major, so you also have a degree in communications,
Yeah,
which is good.
yeah,
Um,
good point.
but that being able to grow up in a community of people helps so much. I think so many people think of homeschool kids as just like they only exist at home, and maybe they
Mm.
come out for a blue moon when they restock the pantry. Um,
Yeah.
but that was just not the case. I think for a lot of our friends is just we had friends, we had community, and yeah, I had lonely moments and stuff like that. But it was
Mhm.
we were around people, and,
Yes.
and that's the killer thing. That's what gets you socialized with people. So yeah, tell
Yeah.
your husband not to worry, because
Yeah.
I'm sure you will do a great job, and I'm sure your mom again will hold your hand and be like, "You're doing this wrong."
Oh, yes. She is my biggest supporter, but also my biggest critique person. So, and I'm sure she would love to be part of that process with her grandkids. So,
Yeah,
hopefully, we'll see.
yeah. She'll be like, "I don't want to teach, but bring me in as an advisor."
Yeah, yeah, right? The principal.
Yeah, field trips, I'm in.
Exactly. Oh my gosh, yes. Don't give her any ideas.
The Anyway, I'm trying to think, is there anything else you wanna say to homeschool families or any other, I don't know, stories that have popped up in your brain of just like, "Oh my gosh, this one time." Um, yeah, otherwise, like, this has been fantastic.
No, I mean, I think I would say, like, for the moms out there, is it's okay to talk to your kids. I feel like that's something that I saw growing up was that there wasn't a lot of communication with parents and kids. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but it just seemed like there's a lot of with friends that I have now that were homeschooled of like, oh, I didn't know this or I wasn't taught this. Especially about like when it came to like sexuality and purity relationships. I think it's obviously it's awkward, but I think it's important that that conversation is out there because especially now, like social media is everywhere, and so, um, if you don't talk about it, someone will go find it and get the information that they want. And I was thinking about it before I came on here. I was like, I didn't have like Instagram or Snapchat or TikTok when I was like in junior high. I think high school is when that stuff started to come out, but even then I wasn't as into it then. I had Facebook, but like that was like, barely anything. And so but it is so different nowadays because I see it challenging and damaging some kids because they're looking for that void of like what am I missing and like, how do I look perfect and all that stuff. And that's something that I want to make sure I do with our kids is just having that open conversation. So just an encouragement
Yeah,
to future homeschoolers is just be open. It sucks and it's horrible. And I hated having those conversations with my mom, but I'm thankful now because there's things that I know that, a lot of my friends didn't know. There's things that I also had no idea about that I learned from a lot of my friends. And so it was like back and forth, but obviously no parent is perfect and no family is perfect, but I think people just think homeschooling, a lot of bad documentaries have been put out there now and like, they're under a rock and isolated and don't come out, like you said, unless to fill their pantry. But like it really is a beautiful thing. And to see even homeschoolers now out in public at the park and hanging out, it's so fun because it's like this is what like it is like. This is what homeschooling is like. We're outside, we're in nature, we're doing school at the park,
yeah.
So yeah, that's just my little spiel.
No,
So
absolutely. I 100% agree with you. And it's also never too late. There's lots of things that
no.
my parents we didn't talk about when I was a kid, and now we're talking about, and we have that open line of communication. So I love what you said there about parents just being willing to talk to their kids about
Yeah.
anything and everything. Whether
Yeah.
it could be, yeah, anything and everything, sex included. Please, for the love of
Yeah.
God, we need better sex education in this world.
Please educate the kids.
It's never too late. So I love that. I love
Yeah.
that you added that. And yes, homeschooling has, it seems like, been fantastic for both of us. It had its ups, it had its downs, but ultimately it was a plus. It got an A plus. So
Yes.
anyway, Laura, this has been fantastic. And thank you again for coming on the show. I'm so stoked to reconnect with you and hear what's going on. And congrats on your degree and a new baby and all of the wonderful things that are happening in your life.
Thank you for having me. This was so much fun.
All right, guys, until next time, this has been the Ex-Homeschoolers Club. And if you enjoyed, feel free, leave that like, leave a subscribe, do all the things, to do on the social medias. And until next time, we'll see you later. All right, bye.